I would like to know why Officer Chow felt that it was necessary to have any kind of physical contact with my son.
Okay, your son actually brought it up to that level of escalation.
How did he bring it up to that level of escalation? What did he do?
Okay, he was being detained as a Baker Act.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to evaluate him for his mental status.
So the officer informed him that he was being Baker acted, placed his hands upon my son, at which time my son began to fight back.
No, not at all.
I was going to get Baker acted, I walked away, and then it happened.
And then they grabbed you or whatever?
Yeah, basically what he said, he was attempting to walk away, so Officer Chow had to stop him from walking away, because at that point in time he's detained. They can't freely leave school and or any other area, and that turned into physical altercation.
You want to tell me what's going on?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because he was harming himself yesterday.
How's he harming himself? Define harming himself for me, please.
Stabbed himself with a pencil until it was bleeding. There's blood all over yesterday. I just want him to be okay. I just want him
He
to be
is okay.
Okay, good.
Y'all, the school, the resource officer, escalate situations that don't need to be escalated when things could be handled with a simple phone call to me. Now, leaving a message on my cell phone when I am not able to answer it is not communicating with me. Asking me to return a phone call, and when I do, no one answers it or returns that call is not communicating with me. And now I am stuck in this situation where the state is once again kidnapping my son against my will. That's what Baker acting is.
He attacked
What?
the officer. He was okay. When we were talking with the officer, he was okay. And then he got angry.
I just want to point out that Miss Medrick there, the school psychologist, flat out lied. She said he attacked the officer. She said he was okay, we were talking, and then he attacked the officer.
And attacked the officer and would not.
What is attack the officer? Did he swing on the officer, or did the officer put his hands on him first?
I don't know who punched him first.
So if your child in public school, behaves like a normal, living, breathing human soul, for that he will be beaten and thrown into a psych ward. Please protect your kids, folks. Please understand what's happening here. Sorry. Bright light, bright light. Next slide. Now, despite the fact that a formal complaint was filed for excessive force against the officers that did that Baker Act, an internal affairs investigation found that the officers were not at fault in any way. They were acting within their training and guidelines. Solon was released immediately when the psychologist finally showed up at the crisis unit 23 hours following him being taken into custody. It took about 5 minutes for him to be released. He did not meet criteria. We have had horrible, horrible problems finding a lawyer to represent us. I have been told on more than one occasion, it's too bad they didn't break his nose, then we'd really have something. Apparently the attitude is that it's okay to have your rights trampled as long as you're not beat up too badly. This is an attitude that I would like to have changed. We still don't know what punishment the boy that wrote the initial death threats received. We have no idea. Despite this going down, Solon was transferred to another school, to the academy. He graduated 1 full year early, and he joined the Florida National Guard. This is Solon, his lovely girlfriend at prom. Aren't they adorable? Go ahead. Now, there are a couple of things that you can do. I have a petition that you can sign. The petition is asking that basically parental rights be restored. Parents or legal guardians are notified by the school officials and not the police before the police are contacted. No involuntary examination may be initiated without the parent first being given the right to refuse voluntary treatment. For a minor, the only person who consents to treatment of any kind is a parent or legal guardian. Parents or legal guardians, number 2, are to be told to come to their child's school immediately and given information on the situation. If there is no contact at first call, all emergency numbers for the child must be called until someone is reached. 3, at no time is a child removed from school premises without parental knowledge. Parents or legal guardians are to be given the option to take full responsibility for their child and work with the school and police to calm the situation down as laid out by Florida statute, where it clearly states, and it is not apparent that such harm may be avoided through the help of willing family members or friends or the provision of other services. They cannot know if there is a willing friend or family member if they don't ask. Number 4, that the existing law governing the involuntary psychiatric examination of children be amended to restore parental rights by clearly stating the exact procedure that must be followed for a minor and for enacting penalties for failure to properly execute this law. Another thing that you can do, and I have passed out copies to everyone, is a non-consent form. I have a form in front of you both for minors and for the elderly. This is a legal document. I have used it myself personally. It was accepted by the Charlotte County School Board in my son's case. What the non-consent form does is it puts the school or facility on notice that you are aware of the exact wording of the Baker Act and that you do not give up your rights to that person as a parent, guardian, or medical proxy for an elderly loved one in a facility. That you are putting them on notice that you are that willing friend or family member and that you will provide other services. You do not give permission for your child or your loved one to be removed from the school or the facility until you are contacted first and being given the opportunity to take responsibility for them. The people doing most of the Baker Acts, more than 50% the police, their very first responsibility is to protect themselves and the other police. Next is to protect the citizens at large, and then to gain compliance. So, as I said, they've got it oversimplified down to this person might be a danger to themselves or others, and then the police officers having the monopoly on force are going to gain compliance by whatever means they feel is necessary, even if that means trampling a child into the ground. So, I would like to thank you for coming today, hearing what I have to say. Questions? Yes?
Okay, so the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act does deal with mental health. Have you read it? How do you feel about the implementation of that? Act?
Everything that was in that bill was actually part of other bills. It was just sitting, waiting for such a tragedy to take place. There were actually 2 other bills that were waiting to go through the legislative process. I can't remember the exact name of the bills, but they were designed to actually do just that, give parental rights back to people when it came to Baker acting children. And then we had this shooting, and they were dead in the water.
So what you're saying is that act actually doesn't help?
No, not at all.
Makes it
And
worse?
because the Baker Act is already misapplied, it is already abused, calling for more Baker Act powers, and I actually have this as a direct quote here. I had an informal conversation with a Charlotte County Sheriff's officer, and I began asking him hypothetical questions. Do you ever think about the long-term ramifications of, say, Baker acting a child from school? Do you ever think about the long-term psychiatric impact on that child from having a cop put them in handcuffs, drag them out of school by force? Do you ever consider that trauma when that situation could be handled at no cost to the public with a simple phone call to a mom? And his response to me without hesitation is, we are not allowed to think while in uniform. And I find that very, very troubling. They have to be able to think. They have to be able to have better training to include de-escalation techniques, body cameras, something to ensure accountability so that these children are not being medically kidnapped for contempt of cop or for simply having a dramatic moment or a temper tantrum as a child. Children have temper tantrums. Teenagers have melodramatic moments. Childhood is not a mental illness.
So are you saying that Marjorie Stoneman, that just made it worse then, not
It did.
better?
It did.
Because everybody's looking for a quick fix, and there is no quick fix.
Correct. There's
One
one
by
thing
one.
there's one thing that you did not mention too, that she needs to know. Did you get a bill for that?
I did. I have received, repeatedly received bills from the Crisis Stabilization Unit, Charlotte Behavioral CSU, for $800. They want me to pay $800 for them kidnapping my child from me for 23 hours. In order to get him released from the crisis unit, I had to, in order to sign the discharge papers, I had to first sign admission papers. I refused to sign anything when he was first taken into custody. When I did finally agree to sign admission papers, every single one of those papers was signed under duress. Because, as I said, my son did not meet criteria for Baker Act. We did not want their services. We did not need their services. I was being forced to use their services.
Correct.
They were not correctly applying the law, and through force and fraud, I am now receiving this bill, which I will not pay.
How old was he when the situation happened?
The death threat occurred last year. He was 16.
So in your opinion with this, what happened at the school with the school shooting, in my opinion, because I'm very opinionated, as many know.
No.
Oh, yeah, it's true. But I'm 52. I was in high school in '83, and I remember freedom in high school back then. I admit it wasn't legal, but I did some drugs. I sold some drugs. Okay? There wasn't even a cop in school. And now I come down to Florida in the year 2000, and I go by these schools, and it's like they're jails. They have fences all the way around. They got a cop at the school. I gotta admit, for many people know me, I'm pretty rebellious. Oh my God, I cannot even imagine what would happen to me if I was in school today. In fact, I know what would happen. I'd probably be in prison right now, because I was a very bad kid. So now, Marjorie Stoneman, did it not make the schools from a jail into a prison?
Oh, yes.
How many police are in there now? And one entry point.
Here's the thing. Along with that component, though, is supposed to be these task forces. So
Right.
there is supposed to be additional people hired who offer this training.
Okay, well, here's my problem with the training, okay? In order to become a certified police officer, the state of Florida requires 770 hours. If you do that full-time, that's a little under 6 months. It requires 1,200 hours to put on makeup. In order to become a school resource officer, the National Association of School Resource Officers requires 40 hours of block training annually. That block training includes everything from drug abuse, mental illness, yada, 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 down the line. de-escalation, supposedly all of it. But, like, if you'll, the internal affairs report that I have from my son's incident,
This is not an internal affairs report. If this is what they gave you,
that's what they gave me.
then it's incorrect.
Okay,
Um,
that's a joke, right?
What I
Yeah,
received from, what I received in that paper says that basically that because my son told Officer Chow to go fornicate with himself, that Officer Chow was unable to use any of his training and establish any kind of a rapport in order to avoid beating the crap out of my kid.
Any time did he ask him to leave? Did they ask to leave the classroom?
I wasn't in a classroom. They put me in an office for about a few hours before they said,
When you had your head down?
oh, I was in a classroom for that, and I put my head down because I was getting sick of all the crap that was happening. I got a death threat for an ex-girlfriend I had, and
So you put your head down and did teachers,
it was
comedians?
some ISS teacher that was watching over the classroom. There was rules on the board. I didn't really care because I was just sick of it all. I wanted to just sleep for a bit, so I put my head down. I got yelled at for that, so the principal, oh no, it wasn't the principal, it was actually Dean Russell, who told me to go into H building, which had a room in there where I just sat for a lot of the time I was there. And then Wendy Metric came by, talked to me for a bit. I went to get lunch, came back. I was joking around because I was going, she was asking questions like, are you depressed? Of course I'm going, yeah, every time I'm at school, like she said. It ended up with her actually saying, okay, come with me, we're going to go talk to the resource officer. I'm going, okay, why?
So did you realize what you said triggered a red flag in her to say, I've been trained if a student says, yeah, I'm depressed, every time I have to come to this school, do you understand why she then said, oh my goodness, I better do what I need to do and refer him on to somebody else?
Well, I say it's common sense that people should realize what sarcasm is.
Okay.
They're not trained in that.
Oh no.
I get your point. It's a danger.
So here's the difference. So had you gone home and had you killed yourself and she had not taken you, then there would be a group of people, probably including a reporter, that said, really, the kid told you that he was suicidal and all you did was just send him home? You didn't even call his mom? You see the
If
other
I said
side?
that, then they could at least told my mother. They didn't have to take me anywhere.
The other side of that, where was I in this equation?
Correct.
So were you at all told that he said?
The only
you were
time I
adult?
received, no, the only phone call that I received was to inform me that my son was in an ambulance on the way to the hospital.
It had already, okay, it escalated that far based on what you had said.
Mhm.
So they should have called and said, we think we have a problem.
Correct.
Not, he could get an $800.
Had Miss Wendy Medrick called me up and said, Miss Caskey, I am concerned for your son, it would have taken me about 15 minutes to get there. And if I I gave birth to him, I carried him, I gave birth to him, I raised him. Nobody has more of an interest in him becoming a healthy, productive member of society than I do. So if I honestly believed that he was in some kind of trouble, I would have taken him to get help myself. How dare this woman step all over my rights and invent things to kidnap my child from me?
And I would agree, it wasn't an absolute crisis in that moment.
No.
I get your point though, but I bet you if you asked half of those high school students, half of them said they depressed every day, they had to go to
Yes.
school.
Well, especially now
I
that
thought
they're
I
like
heard
a
you tell
jail.
a story about a girl that just made a little statement, a dramatic statement.
I have more than once. I spoke to a gentleman, his daughter was in the Punta Gorda Junior High. And she made, I don't know if she was just having a bad day or what, but she made an off-the-cuff remark of, oh, I could just die. It took this gentleman, a lawyer, $6,000 and 6 days to get his daughter back.
What did you say, a lawyer, what was the rest?
It took 6 days and an attorney to get this little girl out of the crisis unit. Supposedly the
6 days,
6 days.
72-hour hold, how'd they get?
It takes 72 hours to go in front of a judge and say, I think we need to hold them more. That's what the 72-hour is.
But there should have been a shrink at that point that signed off on that.
Apparently a shrink did. But it took a lawyer, I don't know why they continued to hold this girl. The officer that actually did the Baker Act was the school resource officer for Punta Gorda Middle School. Told the father that he did not believe his daughter was a danger to him, to herself or anyone else. That she was just, spouting off, having a moment. But yet she wound up in there for 6 days. The youngest child I have heard of being Baker Acted in the state of Florida is 2. 2. Yes.
I'd like to bring up another fun fact. I know a guy that does cop watch in Charlotte County, and he pulled the IA records, internal investigation records for Punta Gorda, and guess who was on internal investigation records, Hillary?
Officer Terry Chow.
How many times for excessive force?
Officer Chow has been investigated 8 times over the last 12 years for excessive force type complaints. He's been cleared in 6 of those instances. Of the 2 that stuck, the last one was in 2014 for violating civil liberties.
Is he still
He is a full-time school resource officer in Charlotte High.
Still.
Do you believe that school resource officers should be the ones with body cameras?
I
Yes.
absolutely believe they should have body cameras. They should have extensive training in de-escalation techniques. Not every scuffle in the cafeteria should result in a felony charge. Not every dramatic moment or comment from a child deserves hospitalization. These people need to have much better training.
And so my disclaimer is I cover both Charlotte County and Sarasota County. In Sarasota County, they are going to forego the services of the Northport Police and the Sarasota Sheriff's Office, create their own police department. So if you could give advice to parents and the school district, what are 3 or 4 things that you would say, please try to get this right so that there are 8 investigations of the SR.
I would say to make sure that there is a standard procedure in place when it comes to Baker acting children at school, to make sure absolutely that the parents are involved from the start. From the minute there starts to be a problem, somebody needs to be on that emergency contact card dialing numbers until somebody comes. I would say the police, even the school police, need to have body cameras. There needs to be that much better training, especially when it comes to dealing with just people. For instance, I used to catch shoplifters for a living. I caught people shoplifting that outweighed me by 100 pounds and were a good 1.5 feet taller than me. But yet, in the whole time I did that job, the only person that fought with me was a 15-year-old child. Those men that could have easily stomped me into the ground, I was able to talk into coming back to my office with me and not making a scene. Because honestly, most people just want to be treated with a little bit of respect, and when they're caught doing something wrong, they don't want to be embarrassed. That's basically what most human nature boils down to. So if you can